Alrighty, welcome to this video. In this tutorial we're going to talk about how to animate the things that you've drawn. So I'm going to go here to ActionScript 3.0 mainly just because we can do the 3D stuff. So first things first is you could draw everything in here, but there are other tools better for drawing like Illustrator and Photoshop. So you are able, I have this folder here with two things, one in Photoshop and one in Illustrator. You are able to import things from these programs into Animate. Now, these are really junky drawings. I mean, I made these in like less than a second. It was just to kind of make a couple things and make sure it had a few layers. So here it is. So we have two layers. We have one with high and this on it. Okay, and then we then have this layer with the squiggly. And let me open the Photoshop one. It's very similar. It's just a file with some layers on it. So we'll get rid of that. Head over to the layers. So we have an ellipse layer. We have the layer with the little drawing thing on it. And then we have a layer with high. So I'm going to go back here. I'll save this. I'll just call it animate. And I'll save it inside a folder called animate on my computer. So if you go to File Import, and I'm going to import to the stage, in other words, I'm going to put it right here, and it's going to go on my timeline here. And the timeline's meant for animation, by the way, which we'll cover in a minute here. But I'm going to go to File Import, import the stage, and I'm going to import this PSD. Okay, when I do this, it's going to say these are the layers that we detected. Which ones do you want to import? Well, I don't really care about that background one. We're not creating a movie clip. We'll talk about that later. We are going to convert the layers to animate layers. So in other words, each layer here is going to have its own layer here, which is good because in animate you can only animate things that are on their own layer. So that's definitely what you want. So I am on a low resolution, so I think everything's good. So I'm going to hit enter, okay, and it imported it. So you can see the ellipse layer got imported. So there's the ellipse there. You got the thing there, and then you have the high there. All right, so it works really well with Photoshop. And then you can come over here to the library, and you can do a drop down here, and you can see these things have been converted into symbols, which is really good. And we'll talk about that here soon. Okay, so I'm going to delete those. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with the Illustrator file. So I'm going to import to stage, the AI file. It kind of does the same thing. It says, hey, these are the layers that we find. We want to convert them to animate layers. Doesn't have as many options as the Photoshop one had, but that's okay. And then also you can say, well, I want to set the stage size to the same size as my Illustrator file. So if I've set up my Illustrator file with my whole scene, my background, my characters, and everything, and I want it to be the exact same size, I can check that. So I'll hit import. Okay, now this does a little bit different. You can also see that the size of the stage was changed. But this puts it on as a symbol, which we'll talk about here soon. Well, actually, no, I don't think it did. No, yeah, it put high there. Okay, so high in the squiggly. Yeah, high and this were on the same layer here, which, yeah, high and the square are on the same layer. So I'd want to make sure those are on different layers. But anyways, the point here is just you can easily draw something in here and then easily import it into Animate so they can all be on their own layers, and then you can start animating them. All right, so let me delete that layer. So we'll head over here. We'll go to Properties. I'm going to shrink that back down. I think it's like 500, 400. That's big enough. I can always come over here to say Fit in Window, so it'll make it fit. And I can do different zooms as well, or I can hit Control minus or Control plus. So this is the timeline up here. I'm going to call this shape. You really want to get into a good habit of naming your layers. If you don't, you'll forget where things are, and it'll just get really, really tough to figure out where the things are that you've drawn, where they're located, and it'll be hard to find them later on. So I'm going to draw just a circle here. Okay, it's not doing anything. This is my playhead right here, the little red square. And this is set to be at 24 frames per second. So when I get to 24 frames right out here, it's going to be 1 second of animation. So I'm going to come out here and I'm going to right click and I can say insert frame, or I can insert a keyframe or insert a blank keyframe. But I would recommend memorizing and using the hotkeys. F6 puts in a keyframe. Now keyframes are important because keyframes tell you where the animation starts and where it ends. So with this animation, I hit delete there. I want it to start as a circle and I want it to morph into a square, and it's going to morph into a square down here. So I have it here that it's going to start as a circle, which is good, and then I come over here and I want it to end as a square down here. So I clicked on this keyframe and then I drew the square. Now I can drag this, but nothing's going on. There's no animation. We just know that it starts there and it ends there. And then we got to tell animate to kind of add everything in the middle. So I'm going to right click and do create shape tween. And what that does is it gives a morphing effect. So you can see if I just hit enter on my keyboard, it'll play it. Now it's probably going to look jerky on your screen just because I don't have a smooth frame per second on this recording, but just know on my computer it looks really smooth. So I hit enter and it just plays. So that's really what shape tweens are meant for, is just kind of morphing animations. Let me show you another thing you can do with the shape tween that's kind of cool. So I'm going to remove that tween, right click. So I can start here, and I showed this on the other video, but I can draw a little line here, and then I can select that. So I'm going to hit Control C. If I come over here and I hit Control Shift V, it pastes it into place. In other words, it pastes it in the exact same location that I copied it from. If I just hit Control V, kind of see how it pasted it in the middle? I don't want that. I want to paste it exactly where I copied it from. I copied it in this location, so I hit click on this keyframe here, Control Shift V, puts it in the same spot. On a Mac, that's probably going to be Command Shift V, something like that. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to use the width tool like I did before. And I'm going to click and drag. Actually, I'm going to add that point. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of open it up. And you can see that it's kind of like a mouth. The mouth is shut, and then it's open. And so I can right-click in between, and I can say Create Shape Tween. And now you can see I can start getting some mouth movements. You know, and I can maybe move it over a little bit. So he's talking out of the side of his mouth. You know, I mean, whatever. But you can see with the shape tween using the width tool, you can start getting some maybe animation of mouth movement, things like that if you're going to start using a character. And it takes them a second to do that, but obviously we talk a lot faster. So I can remove some frames. So I could right click and say remove frames, remove frames, remove frames. I'm just doing it one at a time. Or I could select a bunch, click and hold, and right click and do remove frames, and then that works. And then if I hit enter, it goes a little bit quicker. But there's also shortcut keys that you'd really want to know for this, and it's F5. So if I hit F5 on my keyboard, it's adding a frame every time I hit F5. If I do Shift F5, it removes frames. You'll be using that all the time, because if you have an animation that's not long enough, then you'll need to add some frames. So F5 to add some frames. If it's too long, Shift F5 to get rid of frames. And remember, F6 is keyframes. F6 adds keyframes. The quicker you learn these hotkeys, the better your experience inside Animate's going to be. So just so you're aware of that. Okay, so that's the mouth. I'm going to add a new layer here, and we'll call this motion because this is going to be a motion tween. All right, so let's say there's something, I don't know, it's going to fly into this guy's mouth. Who knows, maybe a gumball or something. So one thing to always pay attention to with your layers is where things are located and what they're named. So I just double click this to rename my layer. So this is my shape tween, and when I made this I called it motion. Now also you can hide stuff, so if I wanted to see what it would look like if without a layer, I can hide the layer, or I can lock it, which means I can no longer edit it. I can't select it. I can't do anything. It's set in stone. It'll do that forever. I'll never be able to select it again until I unlock it. All right, so let's say I have this little circle here. Okay, and I want it to fly up into the mouth, whatever. Now, because I'm going to be doing a classic tween, which is how motion tweens used to be done, you got to convert these to symbols. But the cool thing is it used to be that you had to do it manually, but now if I just right-click and say create classic tween, it's going to automatically convert it to a symbol for me. And I'll know it's a symbol because it has this blue box around it. Where when I click on this, it's just a normal drawing. A normal pixel drawing, it's not a symbol. And you'll know it's a symbol because if you come into your library, you'll see it here. All of your symbols are going to be hanging out in your library. Now, motion tweens can only be animated with symbols. Why? I don't know. That's just how Flash is made. So it's the same thing. I want the ball to start there, and I want it to end inside the mouth. So right now I got these dots going across, which tells me the tween is busted. Right here I got this solid arrow, which tells me everything's good. So this is busted because it's like, look, I know where it needs to start, I don't really know where it ends because you're not giving me a keyframe. So I'm going to go F6 and see I gave that keyframe. Now it's happy, but nothing's happening because it starts there and it ends there. So now all I got to do is take this one and kind of put it into the mouth there. Okay, so now it goes up into the mouth. Okay, and we're good to go. Now if I wanted to, I could shrink it down a little bit. I could hit Q, hold down Shift, and just shrink it a little bit. So now it's big, it goes small, so it kind of actually looks like it's going further away from me now because it's getting smaller. All right, so that's the motion tween. And if I wanted to, I could come out here, F6, and I could keep moving it. I could move it over there. So it goes there, and then it moves over there. And as I'm adding keyframes and I'm moving this and making it bigger and smaller, it's going to be doing different things. But the keyframe tells you what it's doing, and then all of the frames in the middle, Animate just puts in there for us. It's smart enough to do that. All right, now I'll call this one new motion because this is the new motion tween. This is the new one that was introduced, I think, in CS5 or CS4. It's been a while. So I guess it's not that new. So I will draw just something quick. I'll just grab this polystar thing. Boom. You just put whatever you want to animate on, and you can right click and do create motion tween. Okay, and it says, hey, we can't tween this unless we convert it to a symbol, and that's fine. I'm just going to say, yeah, convert it to a symbol. So now I got it in here as a movie clip. This is in here as a graphic. So a graphic symbol, and this is a movie clip symbol. The main difference is you can embed motion inside of movie clips, which we'll talk about later. So the way these differences, classic motion tweens are purple, the shape tweens are this green color, the new motion tweens are blue. And they're a little bit easier to use in the fact that all you got to do is go, all right, about here I want this Remember to be on the black arrow tool. I want this to kind of be over here. And then about here, I want it to be over here. And then on this keyframe, I want it to be down here. And then at the end, it's going to be kind of where it started, or at least close. And you can see as I'm doing this, it's making this path. So now when I test it, I hit enter, it's flying around. And I'm like, oh. And that's kind of another good thing to know, is if I wanted to just add more frames to one layer, I click somewhere on that layer and I start hitting F5. But see how only that layer is growing? Or I come down here and hit F5 a bunch of times. But if I want the whole thing to grow, if I want all of the layers to grow together, I click up here on the playhead and I hit F5, and then that adds frames to everything. That's a really good thing to know, because it can get, once you have 20 layers that you're working with, sometimes you need to make sure you add frames to all of them. So you just click up there and hit F5. Works the same thing. Shift F5 will get rid of all of them. Anyway, so if I want that to go a little bit longer, I can throw in some F5s there. And then you can tell just kind of where it's going by looking at this path. Now, if I want it to kind of swerve a little bit, I can use the black arrow tool. I can come over here and kind of bend the path so it kind of swings out and then goes in. Okay, then it goes straight across, and I could do the same thing. Come over here, bend it a little bit. But this bends the whole thing. Okay, and I can take the beginning and I can say, no, you know what, I want them to actually start over there, or I want it to start down here. Or you can just move the path real easily to kind of say where you want it to animate and how you want it to animate. Or you can grab the wide arrow tool and start messing with these individual points. So I can come over here to where you see how it becomes a white square. I can click on it, and now I start getting these curves again. So I can get more of a curve motion going with the animation. So if I wanted to get something that's maybe floating on the sea like a boat or something, I can kind of start swerving it up and down, and the boat will just kind of go up and down like that. I mean, it's whatever you want to do there. Okay, let's head over here. Now, another thing you can do, we don't really need to care about that. Now, with these new tweens, I can right click and go into Refine Tween. And that's going to give me all the stuff that's going on to this layer, this guy right here. It's going to give me it all on these little graphs. So I can kind of see what it's doing on the location. So on the location, this is what it's doing on the x-axis going straight across. This is what it's doing on the y-axis going up and down. And I haven't added any effects or anything. So you can kind of change it in here. So you can see as I move it in here, it moves it down there. Now this obviously is going to take a lot of practice to kind of get an idea, okay, if I change it here, what is it going to do down there? And same thing, you can kind of get these, you can get those crazy curves going on with the handles. So you can kind of twist it around as needed. So, but this is a way that you can kind of mess around with the animation, where before, we'll get out of there, I'm going to right click and click on Refine Tween. Where on this one, you can just kind of add keyframes to tell it what you want it to do. But in here, you can't really do that. Not as easy anyway. So you got to right click and go into Refine Tween, and this is where you start adding things. So I can come here and I can add an anchor point on graph, which is basically like a keyframe. And I can say, no, I want it to go down a little bit, or I want it to go up a little bit. Whatever you're doing there. You can fit to view. You can zoom out or zoom in. I mean, again, this is just going to kind of take some experimenting to get an idea of what you're doing and to get it to do what you want it to do. But it's there, and it's good to know about. Okay. So let's play around with this a little bit. So I'll go 3D here. So one thing you can do, so like say I draw this square. Okay, I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit Q, and I'll just kind of move it a little bit like this. Come over here, F6, come over here, F6. We'll create a classic tween. We'll see if 3D will let us do that. Right click, create the classic tween again. So I can come here, it starts there, and I'm going to come over here and do this 3D tool. Let's see if it'll let me. It may not let me on the classic tween. I'm in uncharted territory right now. Yeah, I think the classic tween, it won't let me do it. So I'll remove the tween. I'm going to clear these keyframes. That's the only way I know of getting rid of keyframes, because if I hit delete, they don't go away. So you got to right click and do clear keyframe. All right, so I'm going to right click and do create motion tween. And now I think I'll be able to do 3D stuff. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe not. It's just not liking me. I'm going to remove the motion. I'm going to create it's interesting that it'll let me do it there, but not there. I bet you because it has to be a movie clip. Alright, so let's try that. Again, sorry guys, sometimes I'm learning with you. So I'll draw this again. Grab it, F8. For some reason my F8 just doesn't want to work. It's kind of annoying actually. Alright, so I'm going to go modify, convert to symbol, do a movie clip. I'll just call it 3D. Alright, now it lets me do that. So let's try just a normal motion tween. I'll hit F6 kind of there in the middle and F6 there. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, Control C. Oh no, actually it kept it there, so we're okay. So create the classic tween, create the classic tween. We'll see if it lets us. Probably isn't going to let us here. Yeah, so we'll get rid of that. Probably have to do the new tween, which is fine. I'm hitting Control Z there. Okay, so we'll hit create motion tween. Yep, it seems like it still likes it. So I'll come over here and I'll move it. I'm going to move it, I don't know, just over a little bit. But I want it to kind of flip a little bit. Like that. So we can see we start getting this 3D animation. You can get something to kind of twist and come in. But maybe we want it to be a little bit closer. I mean, we just want it to do that full flip. So just boom, right? So now you can start getting this 3D type animation where things can start flipping around a little bit. But it looks like you have to do it on the new motion tweens, and you got to do it on movie clips. So if I'm thinking that is a little too quick, I can click and just drag this to make it kind of last a little bit longer. Because when you get a cool 3D effect, you want it to people to be able to at least to see it, right? Anyways, so there we go. Another thing you can do is come over here to properties. So I'll hop in on this one. And I will select this, and I'm going to come to color effect. Here, right when I clicked on it, it took me to color effect. And I'm going to say alpha. And what this does is it allows us to make things kind of fade in and out. So this is going into his mouth, so we'll kind of make it disappear, I guess, as it gets there. So it comes in, you can see that it's slowly fading out, and then when it gets to the mouth, we could say alpha, we could make it be completely gone. So it goes in, it's fading out, gone, but then it goes and it animates back to this where you can see it again, so it's going to fade back in. So that's a cool thing to know, to be able to kind of animate things that fade in and out. Okay, let's see here. Another good thing to know down here is ease. Ease is what you can play with. It basically eases into it, so it's when something has to accelerate. So this is probably going to look horrible, but I'll make another layer. I'll call it ball. F6, F6. Throw a ball in here. I'll hide all this so we can kind of see what this is doing. So I got this ball here. We'll put it up here. Okay, we'll do the create classic tween. Copy that, paste into place there. And then we'll paste into place here as well, and we'll create the classic tween. So this is going to fall. So it falls and then it comes back up. Right now, again, it's going to look probably choppy on your side. It just goes down and goes up. It looks more like an elevator. It doesn't really look like it's being affected by gravity. So I can click in here and I can do this ease. And to be honest, I'm not really sure if I got to ease it in or out. We'll see here in a minute. All right, so you can't, maybe you can see it, but it accelerates and then it slows down. So it accelerates and then slows down, and that's kind of what you want. And so when I come here, I'm going to ease the other way. So it accelerates, slows down when it hits, goes back up. And so it, instead of just going up, down, and slow, it gives this kind of, it looks a little bit like gravity is affecting it. It comes down, slows down, and then goes back up. So this looks, to be honest, it looks kind of more like a yo-yo on my screen. But it eases in quickly, slows down, and then it goes back up. So it's a way to kind of give items a little more lifelike movement. Okay, and you can do the same thing here. You can ease stuff out, and when I start adding easing, when you start adding these different things like easing and such, when you go and you refine the tween, you'll see it in here now. There's the rotation, the y-axis. Oh, maybe you won't. Usually it's in here, but I'm not seeing it, but that's okay. All right, so let's get out of there. All right, you can have things rotate. So let's see here. I guess we can make another one real quick. We'll call it rotate. We'll just do the classic tween. I'll throw in this because this actually kind of makes it look like it rotates. Alright, so oops, I didn't want the classic. Create motion tween. Okay, convert that, that's fine. So I'll move it over here. Bring it there, bring it over there. And then I can click here and I'd say I want this to rotate like 5 times. And you can see, and the funny thing is it actually rotates way more than 5. To be honest, I've still yet to really figure out why it does that. Maybe someone smarter there knows how, but now it goes and it kind of rotates. So now it looks like this is how you could do like a wheel on a car. It actually looks like it's rotating, going down the hill, kind of a thing. All right, and then if I right click and go refine tween, make it fit. Rotation, it's in there. So you can see this is the rotation line that kind of controls it. So as you're messing with the tween, you can play around with that. You can add the ease as well in here, which is probably a better place to add it than the properties. But again, this is just stuff you'll want to play around with to kind of figure things out to get it to do what you want it to do. All right, we'll do another one. We'll call it car. Hopefully I don't destroy this one too bad. We'll see. I'm going to create a car really quick. It's going to blow your mind, people. Okay, there's the car. I'm going to convert him to a symbol. So modify, convert to symbol, or F8. Make it a movie clip. We'll call it car. So this one you got to play around a little bit with here. But I'm going to create just a normal motion tween. And I'm going to have him start out here. Oops, bring that over. He'll start out here. Okay, I'm going to have him come in. Then I'm going to have him kind of go up a hill. Then I'll have him go down a hill. And then I'll have him go up a little bit. And then I'll have him drive off into the sunset. Alright, so if I hit enter, he goes up, down. Okay, but that doesn't really look very realistic, right? Usually if you go up a hill as a car, you need to kind of tilt up. So if I click here, I can tell him to orient to the path. And what that'll do is it kind of makes him do a little bit more of a natural motion. See? And then all I would need to do is go in there and draw the mountain. And he would go from there. Now if I wanted this to be the mountain, I could draw it over it. But what I would need to do is come over here and hit Q. And then this is kind of the anchor point that it goes off of. And I'd want to bring it down a little bit. So now he goes up and down the mountain where the wheels are. So this little anchor point thing here is what it uses to follow the path. And you can only change that when you're in transform, which is kind of interesting. But so yeah, it'll attach to the path using this little white dot. And you use that for a bunch of other applications as well. Alrighty guys, let's see. I think that's good for now. I think you're all ready to shoot me right now, which is fine. Last thing I want to show you is I saved this and it made an FLA file. This is kind of like a PSD in the fact that it contains all the layers, it contains all the animation, it contains all the drawings, it contains the library, it contains all that stuff. But if you were to post this online, you can't do it with an FLA. It doesn't actually contain the animation to where it would play in a browser. So to do that, you have to export it. You can go, or you have to publish it. So you can hit File and publish it, or you can hit Control Enter. That's how I do it all the time. So let's do that. I'm going to hit Control Enter, and what that does is it publishes it. That looks horrible. It publishes that into a SWF right here. This .swf, and then this is the file you would use to post on a web page or something like that. I'm going to hit publish just to see what that does. So publish. All right, yeah, that publishing actually creates an HTML file that it'll play in. So if I open up the code, yeah, it created a, no, it didn't create a GIF. There it is. So there it embeds the SWF. That's where it runs it. So this just creates the HTML code that you would need to then take this HTML file and this SWF, put it on a web server, and then it would play. But again, it's a SWF, so it would need the Flash player to play, so it wouldn't work on most mobile devices. So publishing creates the HTML file, and then Control Enter just creates that SWF, so you can take a look at it and see what it looks like. So that's the main difference. This is what actually contains the animation that you use on a website. This contains all of the workable files, just like the PSD, all the layers and everything. And then when you publish it, it creates this HTML file that would let you embed it and watch it online. Anyways, guys, I know we covered a lot. Hopefully that helped. But you should be able to start animating now knowing what you know. So good luck. We'll talk to you later.